excited to have everyone in here. And with that, I'd like to request Mr. Asif Saleh to officially sort of deliver the opening remark and get us all going. Thank you.
So it's great to see in a conference with young people, a lot of young representation, which is uncommon, believe it or not, because it's like one of those things that, thank you. Recently, you probably saw on internet and social media that their conference about, or award about women and gender empowerment, they were all men, right? So there was not a single woman in there. So even in a lot of conferences in Bangladesh or in other places, you will see that people are talking about young people, but there are mostly old people like me. So it's good to see this fantastic representation. And Ovi, thank you for that great opening. I'm gonna just set the context about why we chose this topic, this theme this year. Every year, as you know, there are different themes. So let's start. So we want to kickstart with this July 1st event. I mean, I think basically a lot of you who are in Bangladesh or who knew about this, that it was a watershed moment in the history of Bangladesh. The most gruesome terrorist attack happened, which is not so far away from here. Almost 29 people were murdered in a restaurant. 20 of them were foreign nationals. And it was 4 young people from relatively affluent background who basically schemed the whole thing and did this. And there was a lot of soul-searching questions that happened around the country at that time. Why is this happening? What was the reason behind this incident? And the people were astonished. There were one student from BRAC University who were one of the 4. What was the key reason why they were doing that? And then one thing we did, but we actually sent a few people across the country to talk to young people. And I'm going to come to some of those findings later on, what they were saying about why it happened. But when we talk about young people, I'm going to start with the context of Bangladesh, because oftentimes we think that youth group is a big homogeneous entity. They're all the same, they use smartphone, they're more urban. That's the kind of mindset often comes, and also that's the kind of people who also represents young people in various development forums and stuff. But is that really the case? It's not. I mean, just if you look at some of the numbers here, in terms of, this is a startling number, for example, and they're often unrepresented in these conversations. Every 1 out of 5 secondary school-going young people actually goes to madrasas, right? That's a lot. That's 20%. And what is their future? Where are these in the conversation? If you basically look at some of the changing context of Bangladesh as well, which is also quite important, that Bangladesh is getting urbanized very, very quickly, right? And again, it's not just a Bangladesh phenomena, it's globally various countries who are going through these economic upswing, they are going through this urbanization phase. By 2040 as well, so half of Bangladesh will live in urban areas, which also has a different context, different reality. And we're going through this immense transition right now. If look at what this youth bulge that everybody talks about, if we see that about 48% of Bangladesh, they were born after 1992. So that's a huge thing. If you think about it, this is 90s. There were a lot of these sort of past histories that we refer to often in our conversations. They were not part of this, so they can't relate to these conversations. So it's really, really important to understand what is the changing nature and the context of when these young people are growing up. So in terms of This is some of I've taken some of the recent various surveys that have happened in Bangladesh. What are the biggest major problems in Bangladesh today when you ask young people? There's an interesting divide. Urban youth mostly concerned about political instability and corruption. On the other hand, rural young people will talk about electricity crisis, poor transportation system, lack of opportunities. Those are some of the things that they talk about. When they ask them that what are the different reasons to why young people get into conflict, so first thing that comes about is 69% cases. These are unemployment-related issues. Basically, in community, oftentimes it's a land-related crisis. Again, there is this rural-urban divide that happens as well. So this is an interesting fact going forward that, just some basic numbers that may actually startle you. For every 3 young people, 1 is not currently in the labor market. So I'm just digging down a bit on that unemployment crisis a bit. 95% of the young people actually are working in informal sectors, right? So if you look at 41% of Bangladeshi youth, age 15 to 25, they're not in employment, neither in education, neither in training. That's a huge number if you think about it, that they're not involved in any of those things. If you look at some numbers if you look at young women, I mean, a huge number in terms of 80%, they are at home and they're not in labor force. That's a large population of young people. And about 40% of the secondary students dropped out before they finished the secondary exam. And almost half of the girls. Therefore, when it comes to girls, it's more about 50%. And this is something I mentioned. And every year, about 2.2 million young people actually are joining the workforce. And we simply can't create that many amount of jobs in Bangladesh. So what do? I think that is a very, very practical crisis that we are facing. And again, it's not just a Bangladesh phenomena, right? It's a global concern. And in BRAC, we are in 12 countries outside Bangladesh. Whether it's in Uganda, whether it's in Nepal, it's the same challenges that we see everywhere. Youth unemployment in Pakistan. People are talking about jobless growths everywhere. And a lot of this, and if you look at economic terms, Bangladesh is doing great over the last since 1990, Bangladesh has posed a steady 6% growth. Over the last sort of 2 years, we have crossed the 7% limit. Now we are thinking about double-digit growth and 10% growth over the next few years. But the same number of jobs that these kinds of economic growth created in the past, that's not happening anymore. And whether it's technology, whether it's efficiency that are coming in, so that's another area where we're going to talk about in this forum as well. What is the future of jobs for countries like ours, and what do we do in these kinds of situations of jobless growth? Because in all these countries, these kinds of youth unemployment are causing, it's not just limited to poverty anymore. It's now causing social tension. It's causing social cohesion issues. It's causing security concerns everywhere. So in this turmoil, in this crisis, I mean, the question becomes that, do we actually reframe the dialogue in development around young people? And I think there's a lot of talk. This conference is around doing the work. So we are going to focus on real models in terms of what is actually happening. What are the models that are out there which can scale? Speaking of models, I mean, BRAC is trying a few things. So in terms of when we, of course, went outside the country to listen to young people, after the Holi incident, there we heard a number of things. Of course, unemployment came front and center. People's, young students concerned about what do they do after they graduate, about their career, that became front and center. So skills development, which will make them employable going forward, was a key issue for that. So we developed a large-scale program around this. So we will hear from some of our program leads there. And again, as I was saying, that 2.2 million young people joining the job force means that there will be, no matter how good we are in terms of matchmaking and job creation, there's simply not enough jobs for these people. So we have to look at outside Bangladesh. We have to create portable skills so that they can go outside in international countries where there are specific skills shortages, they can go there. So we have a migration program which caters towards that, to do ethical, affordable migration program. We have adolescent clubs, and 1,700 adolescent clubs that actually teaches life skills, that actually teaches soft skills for young people. And we have a number of school-based initiatives. Again, I'm not going to go too much into this details, but one specific new initiative that we started called Amra Notun Network, which means that we are the new generation, and it's a network, it's a community of young local mentors who will be the change makers in their own community. So we are trying to go to 64 districts and create at least 100 local mentors in each of these districts who will drive changes and who will be the local role model in those districts. So again, I'm going to just quickly skip through this because of shortage of time. But let's talk about some of the weak signals. If we don't address this issue now, what is happening? Weak signals are basically those that get lost among noise, but may have big significance in the long run. And I'm going to identify 2 weak signals from recent newspaper headlines, right? And these are real headlines. Weak signal number 1. And this is something you guys know, that this was a recent study that was done, where it said 10% students in Bangladesh universities actually said that they actually support terrorism. So which is very interesting, because they basically said that there's enough reason to actually support this, because they don't feel any ownership in the society. That's a small number, in a sense, 10%, but that's why it's a weak signal, that it's significant, at least 10% actually think, after this gruesome incident, that this is justified. That's basically quite alarming, and that's why it's a weak signal, but can become a big noise in the long term. 54% of these groups are between age 18 and 25. 51.7% of this group are from well-off families. 84.2% thinks the trend is getting worse. And 93.6% blamed indifference of families, and 90% blamed political instigation. So very, very interesting figure. I mean, and talking about the larger issue, we can't just look at employment. We need to look at this issue holistically. What is the role of the families, the role of the society coming in? And the second weak signal is drug abuse alarmingly rising in Bangladesh, right? So again, these are not isolated incidents. 6 million drug users, average age 22. 10% outpatients in Bangladeshi hospitals actually come from drug-related illness. And 56.1% of this group are students, or they are unemployed. Not unrelated. Again, so this is basically, we look at one issue, but all of these issues are connected. And within this, this sort of context, we basically think about how do we approach development globally, focusing on young people. There was a time in the 70s when Bangladesh's post-war rehabilitation efforts started. Bangladesh focused on women, and it has paid huge dividend in terms of bringing women out of their homes and making significant changes in the society. Is there time to change that now? Is there time to change the focus towards young people now? So in that context, we are in Frugal Innovation Forum, but Ovi talked a lot about that, so I'm not going to repeat that. It is a platform of doers. we want you to build partnerships here. We want you to talk about your models that can be scaled up, that we can learn from each other. We have some great impact talks. We will have some panel speakers who are going to talk about some of these sessions. And it's the 6th forum that we are doing, we want to continue to do different themes which are more topical and in frames. But in terms of a lot of these discussions and plenaries are mostly focusing on some of these issues I mentioned, but at the same time, what are these 21st century skills that everybody's talking about? The impact of technology on youth, both on the positive side, impact of technology in the future job market, and youth on the move in general. So we have a great lineup. You'll have an app where you can see the agenda. And again, it's a mix of events in terms of not just panel talks. There are a lot of workshops as well. So you'll actually have to do some work as well. So which is actually makes it interesting. So I think it's going to be very fascinating to hear from all of you and also interact in the coming 2 days. So we are looking forward to it. We're looking forward to finding simple solutions that we can scale, not just across the country, but across globally. So thank you very much.